Welcome into Beyond Sunday. I'm your host, Luke, and I am joined by Rhett Jackson, who we will introduce him in just a minute. But first, I want to talk about really quickly, kind of highlighting what we've been doing the last week at the Springs and what's coming up that's super exciting. So we had Gather 25, which was awesome, a success. We had a prayer room, which I heard was heavily utilized here at the Springs for Gather 25. So I was not able to make it. I had Lauren's best friend got married, and
excuses.
So we were there, and not able to make it, which really stunk. But I heard that it was awesome, and a lot of people got a lot from it, which was great. We also over the weekend did baptisms. Did you guys do baptisms at Middleton?
We did not do it last Sunday. No.
Okay, so I know that we did them at the Ocala campus, at the Lady Lake campus, potentially at Southwest. I'm not entirely sure, but we had baptisms this past weekend. The next ones will be March 30th. So if you are listening to this and you're interested, maybe you attended for the first time this past Sunday and just found us in this podcast, March 30th will be the next time that we have baptisms. We also, for students, have Decrease coming up this weekend. Rhett, will you be there?
I will be there in the flesh. I'll be there all night, Friday night, and all day Saturday as well.
Sweet. So that's for those of you that don't know, maybe don't have students. That is our kind of our student retreat where we do Friday night. They will, kids will check in. We'll do worship and a session and teaching, and then they'll stay at a host home. I know some groups are staying here at the Ocala campus in the venue in our student building and things like that as well. And then Saturday will be a full day of 3 sessions, games, small groups, all that sort of thing. So we're super excited for that. And now to introduce our guest here, Rhett Jackson. Rhett, currently with Middleton, does students, and you also coordinate setup and tear down.
That's right.
But you started out with you were just doing the setup and the tear down, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It was in October of 2023. Jacob invited me to lunch. Kind of just thought we were getting lunch. I had no idea that he was going to offer me a job.
Yeah.
And kind of at that time in my life, I honestly would have said yes to anything, whatever the opportune was.
Yeah.
So
you had just recently graduated.
Just recently graduated
from college.
UF.
Go Gators.
Better school, best school in the country. Luke went there himself,
Yes.
so we got that in common.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just graduated from there, and it was kind of one of those classic situations of just graduated college and what do I do with my life
Wanted
now?
to do something and not sure what to do.
Exactly. Degree was in sports management. My older brother has the same degree, and I just honestly didn't really set myself up for success after graduation. So graduated in August, and then a couple months went by, didn't really have a job, and this kind of just fell into my lap. And I just wanted to do something.
Yeah.
So I said yes, and a year and a half later, I'm still here.
Yeah. Well, and also to encourage you, not that you really care, my wife has a degree in marketing, Lauren, and doesn't use it at all. And I thought that I was stepping away from my degree entirely after I stepped away from working in sports and production there, because my degree is in telecommunications with a focus in production. And I did insurance sales and software sales for like 2.5 years. I was like, I thought I completely abandoned my degree. And now, thankfully, I'm getting to use it now. But so many times that's the case where it's like you get out of college and you're like, I'll do whatever.
Right.
I just need something to be like, okay, I hate this or I love it, so that I can just figure out what I want to do. So kind of, you said that Jacob invited you to lunch, so you had been coming to the Springs already. So can you talk about how long you've been at the Springs and how you got to the Springs?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been a long time. I've been coming here now for about 18 years. And yes, I'm older than 18. I'm just going to throw that out there. A lot of people in Middleton, when I tell them that, they kind of raise their eyes a little bit.
Yeah.
So this is the only church that I really remember growing up at.
Yeah.
I was in second grade at the time. My older brother, Ryan, who I think it's fair to say is this guy right here, Luke's best friend.
Yeah.
They were in 5th grade at the time. And Luke just simply, they met each other, and he said, hey, my parents got a church. You should come sometime. A simple invitation. And I remember my older brother came home. And we were going to a church at the time, and but my parents wanted to try something new.
Yeah.
And we came, and honestly, the rest was history. We just kept coming, and fast forward 18 years, we've been coming ever since. Me and my family.
Yeah, and so Jacob asked you to go to lunch.
Yep.
And is essentially asking if you want to be a part of the team in Middleton.
Right.
Did you know what you were getting into, or you said you'd say yes to a lot of stuff?
That's true.
But did you have a lot of questions for him as far as like
I should have had questions. I didn't ask the questions, but I should have.
You had them in your head.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, to paint you just a little bit of a picture. So I graduated August of 23, and it's fair to say I wasn't really doing very well at the time. And I have a very loving mother. Okay, so she's
great lady. Shout out Angie Jackson.
Shout out my mom. She's close with your parents as well. And she might not have said this, but I know she kind of shoulder tapped him a little bit and said, "Hey, maybe talk to him real quick because he's not doing the best." So I think Jacob probably knew a little bit, that I wasn't doing the greatest. And, but again, I didn't know he was going to offer me a job. So it was one Sunday. He just came up to me I think it was at the deck or something in the lobby. And just invited me to go to lunch. So, I've known him for a long time, not as close as I am, but with you. But he invited me to lunch. We went and kind of just told him what I was going through and everything. And I really just thought it was a nice lunch. And at the end of it, he said, "I don't have authorization to do this, but I'm offering you a job." So he said
when you're helping start a new campus, and you just need equipment set up and whatever, you'll kind of take whatever you can get.
At the time, man, I didn't know anything about Middleton really, other than what Pastor Ron had shared with on Sunday from stage. I knew it was like this new big thing, and there was supposed to be like this river and these boats and going through the town, but I didn't know anything about it. And he just kind of mentioned it and told me a little bit about how we're going to set up and do all this. I'd never even heard of portable church before. I had no idea what it was.
Right.
So I was like, yeah, you just tell me when and where, I'll be there. And it was like an all-day training with like portable church equipment, and that was kind of like the first step. Just getting to know people and getting familiar with it, and it just kind of took off from there.
Yeah, and I think that's something that a lot of people at the Springs don't think about at this point because, like you said, you didn't know what portable church was. I would say everybody that comes to the Ocala campus, probably most of them wouldn't know what that means or what that looks like, and still don't. And there's people out there that go to the Springs that haven't been coming long enough to even know what Middleton is.
Right.
So, yeah, like you said, there was a whole training because you've got audio equipment. Like real quick, what's kind of really out of personal curiosity, what is the stuff that you guys have to set up on a Sunday now and tear down?
So, I mean, I would say we got 2 trailers, and they are stored at a Cube Smart, which is about 10 minutes away from Azelle, which is where we meet on Sundays. And we call one our production trailer, and then the other one is basically the First Impressions trailer. So, it's all the things that you see here in Ocala. We don't have the luxury of having like signage, cafe.
Right.
So as far as, production stuff, any and everything you see production is in this trailer. They're in these big, massive cases. And as far as like signage, cafe, all these other things in the other trailer. And due to some just incredible people and volunteers, man, we come every Sunday morning. We're getting to Azelle about 6:30 a.m.
Yeah.
And these trailers are there. Our trailer drivers are getting them there. We're unloading. We're doing everything as quickly as we can, with the goal of being done by 7:30 because first service starts at 8. And we got 4 services after that. And then after the last one, we got tear down. And I mean, this is an every Sunday thing. So it's a grueling process.
Right.
It's not easy at all. But it's also very rewarding because it's one of those things like you cannot do it unless people come together to help.
Yeah.
And just seeing when you get a new volunteer and how immediately they build a relationship with somebody else, because it's like, I don't even want to use the word struggle because I don't view it as a struggle, but like you're in it together.
Of course.
And you're doing it. And it's just a really cool thing to see like a group of people come together to make something possible when we have the challenge of not having a building yet.
It's one thing as a volunteer to step up and do anything. I won't name anything and call anything out, but if it is not like it is, no matter what you do here at the Ocala campus, for instance, it is not what you guys have to do on a Sunday as far as your volunteers who set up there to tear down. Like, do those people who set up also help you tear down? Is it a mix that you have some people that do both? What does that look like?
So, the goal has always been to get enough people kind of have 2 separate teams split up. But for, the first, I'd say 6 months or so starting, just to, it was a new thing. So we were relying on the same people. They would come in the morning, go to church, maybe go home for a little bit, come back and do it again in the afternoon. And we've been able to build, so, not everybody has to do that. But like I said, some of these people, I can't get them to not be there. You know what I mean? Like I tell them to like take a break and everything. And they say, if I'm not out of town, like I will be here because they are so just invested and so bought into the mission. And it's incredible, man. It makes me personally, I didn't realize at the time, but as I reflect on the past year, I can see how the volunteers have impacted me because I see how selflessly they serve, how they literally just give their time, give their life away. And it kind of makes me reflect a little bit and say, like, what am I doing for other people?
Yeah.
And am I willing to put my own needs aside to help somebody else? And I mean, these people do it at a greater capacity than I've ever seen before.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing about portable church is like I feel like when the church is at its strongest is when they're all doing things like that where they can't stay away, and it takes a sacrifice. Like it's hard to be able to tell people like, hey, be there this early, get the 6:30, like whatever it is, and but I also want to bring some humor into this also of what being a portable church looks like. You talked about CubeSmart.
Yeah.
Can you tell the story of CubeSmart that morning? I know you know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
So tell us the story about the equipment with CubeSmart that morning.
So I don't remember exactly when it was. That time we had 2 hurricanes recently. And whichever one it was, during the week, CubeSmart, I guess we'll say they were hit by the hurricane. Okay. They lost power. They didn't have any electricity. Yeah. And to this day, I'm not really sure why they didn't tell us that they didn't have power or electricity or anything. And so in our mind, it was a normal Sunday. Don Putty is his name. Shout out Don. Incredible volunteer. Okay. I get a call from him at about like 6:02 a.m. And I mean, if you get a call at 6:02 a.m. on Sunday, it can't be good, right?
Yeah.
So he calls me and he says, I can't get the gate open at CubeSmart. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, this never happened before. So they didn't have any power. They had no electricity. And there was also no staff member present at CubeSmart. So we, for lack of a better say, we were caught pants around ankles. We didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
Okay. So I immediately called Jacob. And again, can't be good. Okay. I called him and he said, what's wrong? That was, he didn't even say hello, good morning. He said, what's wrong?
Yeah.
So I kind of told him what was happening. And it's not ideal. And we literally couldn't get all the equipment I just talked about. We couldn't get any of it because the electric gate wouldn't open. So we, made some adjustments on the fly, and we made it work because of the people. Like that specific day, I just got to tell you this real quick.
Yeah.
So all of our kids' equipment, the toys and maybe some pipe and drape, all this kind of stuff, the kids' things are in those trailers. So once I texted all the volunteers and said what was happening, Chuck and Sonia Zeller, this couple, married couple, who are the head of our setup team, without hesitation, they went to their house. They have grandchildren. And when I tell you they came back with a truck full of children's toys, books, coloring books, like it might have even been better than our own equipment. It was incredible, man, to see I didn't even ask them to do it. They immediately said, we'll take care of it. We'll do it. So it was the church coming together to make those things happen for the kids and also our worship team. Shout out Emery. He made it happen. We did an acoustic worship set. And honestly, I mean, in the moment, I wasn't very happy, but looking back now, I mean, I think it was a blessing because we got to see everybody come together and not only make it work, but make it thrive.
And that's what I mean. Like, there are, throughout the history of the Springs, there are the stories of the Springs. There's stories that my dad will tell me that kind of just transport you back in time, and you feel like you're living in that moment where, they walk into Mayor Camp Square for the first time and they have to do a whole demolition and renovate the whole thing and knock walls out. And the people that step up in those moments are the people that are kind of the legends of the Springs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so you're talking about like Chuck and Sonia Zeller, one of the couples that you just mentioned that brought all the toys. Like, that's a story you'll remember
Absolutely.
forever. And so regardless of where you are at, whether it's at the Springs or serving in ministry somewhere or living somewhere else, whatever it is, 20 years down the road, when people ask you about the Springs, it's like, well, let me tell you about Chuck and Sonia Zeller.
Yeah.
And those are the people that make it go. Yep. Like those are the people that, like you said, you didn't even ask.
Right. I didn't ask, man.
They just step up, and that's what leaders do, and that's what people in the church do.
Yep.
When you call a church home your home, you quite literally should mean it, right?
Yep.
Like, this is we'll drop everything to make something happen.
That's it.
And so just so many cool stories have already come out of Middleton. Now at a point where you guys are, I would say, averaging over 1,275, 1,300 at over 1,300 this past weekend.
Yep.
You guys started also abnormal with 500 people. But I will say, I'm sure a lot of those people were people from other campuses at the Springs. I just wanted a front row seat of the first ever service in Middleton because we knew the magnitude that this campus would play, and we know what Middleton is supposed to be long term. as a city, as a extension of the Villages.
Right.
And but for you, and seeing how quickly the growth has happened, you had no you didn't know what a portable church was. You don't know how maybe like a church that grows that quickly.
Yeah.
There's not that many that do grow that quickly.
Right.
But what were your kind of feelings as you've seen Middleton grow, and have you felt it on Sundays aside from adding a service and things, but like in the
Adding 2
lobby
services.
and right. And so what has that been like for you from your perspective?
Man, I mean, I look back to, so the first preview service we had was, I believe, October of 2023. We did 3 of those. And then the first service, like officially, was January 21st, 2024. And I just can't even believe that it's been over a year since we started. And kind of what you just said, we started with 500 people and have over doubled that in growth. And it was just one of those things where when I first started, like I said earlier, I just said yes because I didn't know what else to do with my life. I said yes to the only opportunity that presented itself. And I had no idea how God was going to just move in this campus. And like, it's one of those things now that I look back at the past year, I can reflect on certain moments where I didn't even realize like what he was doing with me personally, in order to grow and all these things, because there's something about being a part of the beginning. And don't get me wrong, like not having a building, it's hard. Like there's a lot of challenges that go into it.
Yeah.
But there's also something that I've learned, like there are so many blessings to not having a building, because for instance, example, we meet at a rec center. Okay. So I can't tell you how many times there's a workout room at this rec center. I can't tell you how many times I have encountered someone walking in there on a Sunday morning in their workout clothes, going to the gym, and they have no clue that they're walking into also a place where church is happening. And we might be able to have a little conversation with them. And, they say, oh, like, that's awesome. I want to maybe check it out, but I can't. Like, I'm wearing my workout clothes. And we say, man, Jacob told me this a long time ago, and I firmly believe this, that Church of the Springs is a church for anyone, but not necessarily everyone. And to me, what that means is it doesn't matter what you've done in your past, doesn't matter where you came from. You can come, and you should come, broken. You don't get fixed first and then come. You come broken. And that door is a door that will always be open for everyone. We will never close it on anyone. So it doesn't matter if you're in your workout clothes, if you're not ready, you're coming through that door. And so that in itself to me is a blessing, because if you're, at a specific building that is church, you're not going to get that opportunity to catch people that don't even know church is going on. So that is a blessing that's happened right there. And just being in the Villages, man, like everybody lives right there. And there has been so many things. And I'm looking forward to the building coming. But honestly, I don't even think about it because like it's going to happen when God has it to happen. Yeah. And I just want to enjoy this process along the way. Like I am hesitant to say like enjoy the grind because it's such a cliche thing, but like it is a grind. Yeah. And, like I really have been enjoying the process so far.
And at the end of the day, you always remember DZL Rec Center.
That's it, man. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, you'll never forget it. And I know that because coming to this location was an upgrade in all senses of the word when we came from Camp Square to here, being in an old cash and carry. But there are times where it's like there's sorry. There's a lot of moments there. And you'll always remember that. And so that campus, like that location plays a part.
Absolutely.
Anyway, kind of moving forward from that conversation, but you not long, well, I mean, maybe how long was it after you guys started where you're doing setup, tear down, you're organizing these teams? Do you get the conversation of, hey, we're growing and we have students, we are still in the Villages technically, but we're getting students and we're getting younger. There's families now. We need a student ministry. Yeah. How long into that journey there did you get that conversation? Did that come to you?
So I would say, so we started, let's say, just beginning of 2024. Yeah. And that summer, occasionally or pretty often on Sundays, we'd get the question of, hey, do you have anything for our students? And at the time, my answer was yes, but in Ocala, I understand it's far away, all these things. And it was a very pressing thing because not having a building, like we didn't have anywhere to take these students. So, shout out Joel, my Middleton people. Everybody knows Joel. We all miss him there on Sundays. Okay. He was at the beginning of this. And I don't even know to this day if it was fully intentional what he did. I like to think it was. So he said, we're going to meet at a park. And come at this time, it was during the summer, so kids didn't have school. So we met at a park on Wednesdays at 11 a.m. in Middleton. And I kind of thought this was like his thing, like he was going to run with it. And he told me to come with him. And I was like, why? Like, I don't know. Like, I want to enjoy my day. Truthfully, that's kind of what I said at that time. I had that perspective.
Yeah.
And I'm very thankful that he kind of pushed me a little bit to go with him. Because I didn't even know what he was doing, but he had it all along in his mind that that I was going to take over it very quickly. Yeah. And I'm very appreciative of him for doing that. So we met over the summer, and school came around, and I was kind of like, oh, now what do we do now? Because we can't meet at a park during the day. These kids got school. Yeah. We can't do it at night because it gets dark around 5:30, 6 o'clock. So we were kind of like caught little like, oh man, we have this momentum from summer. What do we do? And these people. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm giving a lot of shout outs right now, but these people are the reason that these things are possible. Okay. So Helen Good, she is incredibly involved. And I mean, talk about the best volunteer you could ever have. Okay. She just takes over everything. She takes care of things. Right. And I didn't really have a relationship with her at the time. She had been in our Southwest campus. But she heard word that we needed a place. So she reached out to people. And she found a couple. Their name is Brittany and Jay Fugate. And she just asked, hey, like, can we use your house to do this on Wednesday nights in Middleton? And when I tell you these people are the most hospitable people I've ever met in my life, like there's an open door. They don't even need to be there on Wednesday nights. They will still open the door for these students and myself to go to use their house, have a place to meet indoors. And that started just after the summer. And we have been meeting every single Wednesday in their house since then. And just to see, again, like it's a challenge, not having the building. Right. But it is a massive blessing. Yeah. Because these kids, they might live down the street. There's no excuse. I don't have a ride. They can walk. Okay, you can walk two students on Wednesday nights. You can ride your bike. There's usually 10, 20 bikes in the driveway. I just see all over the place. So it's so cool to see that we have all these challenges, but like they don't matter to God because he's going to make a way to make it happen. And this was a need for our campus for students, and we're not going to wait for it. Yeah. We're not going to wait for that building to open. Somehow, due to these amazing people, it's going to happen.
Yeah. And again, just like the legends of the Springs, like that's another family and another volunteer, and Helen Good and how awesome she is. Yeah. But for you, would you say that you've always felt called to ministry? We talk about the conversation with Jacob where you kind of were just wanting to do anything. Yeah. So I think we know the answer to this question, but if not, like how has your calling changed, and what was the moment where you felt like that all changed for you?
Yeah. Just to give you a little bit of the background. So I said earlier, I've been coming here for 18 years. And just, being honest, I was the kid who, if you ask me, yes, 100%, I believed in Jesus. He was my savior. Right. But I came with my parents, and I just sat there, not paying attention, not listening. I was hesitant to even go to the students area just because I just wanted to be comfortable. I was with my brother, so with my parents, and all these things. So it was, I'm going to use the word Christian-ish. Okay, so I felt like I was Christian-ish my whole life. But from an outward perspective, I think that if somebody asked about me, they would say, yes, like he's a Christian, and that's great. But it took going through a very hard time where, let's fast forward a little bit in my life. I got accepted to the University of Florida, which is my dream school. Okay. My dad went there, my brother went there, and everything was good. So I had 1 year left of school, and I just got lazy. I just got comfortable. I'd never been one to like get bad grades or anything like that, but I just honestly straight up just stopped doing the work that I needed to do, with no care of the repercussions that were going to come to me. And it's one of those, I don't really like talking about that much, but there was a day came where after that year of not doing anything, my dad called me into his room, and he had a letter in his hand, and he basically said, tell me why I'm reading this letter that says you've been kicked out of the University of Florida. I didn't have an answer. I mean, it was one of those things where you caught me. You know what I mean? Right. Like I was living in this dark place of honestly just kind of like nothingness. Sometimes you just go through the motions and you don't really know what you're doing. And so from that came some very hard conversations, a lot of reflecting. And something that I decided from that point forward was, if I can do all these things that I want to do personally during the week, if I can, whatever it is, spend time with friends, play some, video games, or go to the gym for hours upon end during the week, I can give 1 hour on a Sunday to the God of the universe, who I have claimed my entire life is my savior. And so I made that decision to go and to commit to, like, no matter what else was going on in my life, every Sunday I'm going to go. And let's fast forward now. That's been 2.5 years.
Yeah.
I've not missed one Sunday of church since that day. And there's just such a difference when you go just to go, or go with the intention of, what can I get out of this?
Yeah.
What can I take Monday through Saturday? And taking notes and paying attention. So I didn't even know what was happening in me, what God was doing. And during that time, that was about a year into it before, Jacob had that conversation with me. And I felt like I was growing in relationship with God and getting closer to him, and things were making more sense, getting more peace. But, to answer your question, did I feel called to it? And the answer was absolutely 100%, without a doubt, no. Okay, that was the answer, because I just felt like, who am I to be able to tell people about this God that I was honestly fake living for a long time. And as I became closer to him, as I, grew personally, there was a shift where, we went, shout out Nick, he's sitting right over here too. We went to something called the Drive Conference, which was just an opportunity for us to be, as a staff, to be poured into and invested in, kind of just grow in our certain areas.
Yeah.
And leading up to that point, it was very kind of, what am I doing here? I'm just showing up every single day. Is this where I'm supposed to be? Like, I felt extremely unqualified to be having these conversations I was having on Sundays with people. I felt like, who am I to, lead people to Jesus if I'm struggling myself in that relationship? So it was a lot of questions going on in my mind of, is this where I'm supposed to be? Am I missing out on maybe something else that could be a good thing for me in my life? So a lot of uncertainty, let's say. But come the Drive Conference, we, went as a staff, and there was a lot of good sessions and everything. But in particular, there was one moment where, I believe it was the first night. It was like late at night. We had a worship session, and we were taking communion. And it was one of those things where, until you experience it, you hear other people talk about it. And honestly, you might kind of look at them with a little bit of a side eye, because it just sounds weird. But I can't explain it to this day, but man, the Holy Spirit just took over. And I'm not a very emotional person in general. But in that moment, Jacob was sitting next to me, and I just started like crying. And he was doing the same. And it was just a very powerful moment, because in that moment, it was the first time that I truly felt that I was where I was supposed to be, that I was where God wanted me to be at that time. And it was like, in an instant, all that uncertainty, all the questioning, it just like turned into excitement, because not only did I feel good about where I was, that I was in the right place, but on top of that, I felt, okay, if I feel all this now, like, what are you about to do? Like, what are all the things that God is going to do going forward? How is he going to use me? How can I honestly just get out of his way? Stop questioning things, stop doubting myself, and just let him do what he's going to do.
Yeah.
And then from that moment forward, it's just a lot more passion, a lot more excitement to coming to the job every day.
Was that before or after you started doing students, like in the house and all that?
That was before.
Okay.
About 4 months before.
Yeah, because there's always moments, like snapshots in your life, where you can point to that are like, it was a turning point, right? Like my dad talks about it with, where he didn't know what he was doing, what to do in general, about to start the Springs. He's driving down the road. A song comes on where the Holy Spirit catches him.
Yeah.
Like with a right hook, and he just loses it, right? He's singing at the top of his lungs. He's emotional. He has to pull over. And he tells God, like, I'm laying it. I'm giving you everything. And then he said that, like, he says that's where he feels like God said, okay, now we can move forward. And so hearing that story, it's like, that's probably what happened with you. And God felt like we can go.
Yeah.
And now you've been going at 150 miles an hour since, taking over, especially with students. And that's where it feels like a lot of your heart is in talking with you day in and day out about ministry and everything. The setup and teardown's awesome, and it's what kind of has gotten you on board here. But the students, can you talk about that? Because we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about that, because it is kind of where your passions lie right now. What has that been like? Where are you guys at now as far as like typically what you can expect on a Wednesday? How many students are coming? How many did you start with? Like, because those stories are always awesome, and people resonate with numbers, and those are all the lives and the stories of those people that are behind those numbers. So where did you start? Where are you guys at now? What's it been like?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say, how I mentioned before we started the park, there would be times where there might be like 3 kids at the park. They would come, and we would still do it. We'd still be there for them, and give them a message, and always give them pizza, like all these sort of things. And we've been able to grow, and it's been so cool to see. So most we've had 30 kids, and when I say that, mind you, it's a house. Okay, so it's not like we have all this room to put people. So we're in the living room, and we have 30 middle school, high schoolers just like sitting on the ground, essentially. But it's just such a testament to church doesn't have to just be at church.
Right.
It doesn't matter where you are. It's in your daily life. It's in your conversations. It's in all your interactions. And for me, the coolest thing that I've been able to see so far is when a kid comes for the first time, understandably so, they might not know anybody. They're very nervous. But when you kind of just give them a little bit of time and invest in them, they become best friends with these other kids in 5 minutes. You know what I mean? Like, they go outside and they're playing volleyball, they're playing football, whatever it may be. They just need someone to take the time to invest in them. And I'm a huge believer that, yes, the message is extremely important, and I want them to get something out of it and to apply it. But I believe that relationships are what matter, because come down the line, 5 years from now, are they really going to remember what I was teaching about on a Wednesday, or are they going to remember when I came to their football game, or when we came and showed up for them in a real life way? And Pastor Ron says this all the time: relationships over religion. This might be a little controversial, but I tell people sometimes I don't like religion. This stereotype of it's a list of do's and it's a list of don'ts, and you have to follow all these rules and do all these things, when I don't think that couldn't be farther from the truth. What it is about a relationship with Jesus, who died for us. And just in this past week's message, I believe they said the Bible is not a list of do's and don'ts, but it is a record of what God did for us. He's already fought everything and won. All he wants to do is get to know you.
Right.
So I believe that relationships are the most important, and being able to build these relationships with these students is just an incredible thing. And having these awesome people around me that I can't do it by myself at all. It is made possible by these people that give their lives away, give their time, these incredible volunteers. And it's a humbling thing to see these people like pour into these students.
Yeah, and to your point, you're talking about like how you would like. It's cool that you give a message, whatever, but the relationships and going and doing things for them. I think I said this last week on the episode, but I don't remember many messages, many sermons of my youth pastors, right? Like the ones that I grew up with, but I can tell you how I feel about them, and it's all about what they did off of the stage, right? When they came down from the stage, what were we talking about? Were we having a good time? And that's and I've mentioned also this a couple times on this podcast, but Will Godara, who is an author, something that he says is that people will never remember what you say. They'll remember how you make them feel. And that just feels like that comes up all the time in ministry, where it's like you could have the perfect sermon, but if your volunteers aren't happy to see people outside of the auditorium, that's the negative impact, and that's what people are going to remember. It's like, there's talented speakers all over the country, but there's not always hospitable people that make you feel good and welcomed, and that you belong, and that you're not, too messed up, right? So, yeah, there's a lot to say about how you make people feel.
And to that point, real quick, when you're talking about whether a greeter or, somebody.
Right.
I am just a huge believer in the power of a simple conversation.
Yep.
Because you never know what somebody's going through. And instead of just casually saying, how are you doing? Actually taking a moment to listen to them and see what they're doing. You might not even see it, but a conversation like that might massively impact somebody's life.
Yeah.
And that's why we have, greeters. That's why we have people saying good morning, and just having a smile on your face and a positive attitude, no matter what you're going through. If you can bring that positive attitude to it, you might not see it, but you will positively impact somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. The power of a conversation. There's a lot in that. And because a lot of these people, like a lot of people that might come to church, whether if they come by themselves or if they come with their spouse, truthfully, and especially if the family, the spouse and you have kids, it might have been some time since you've had an actual real conversation aside from a parenting conversation or a finances conversation. Like people just need a conversation that's just normal.
Yeah.
How was your week? Right? Like that goes a long way. How was your week? Not just how are you? Right? Because that just allows them to open up when you ask them how their week was. They'll tell you what they did. You get to learn more about them, but they also just feel heard.
Yep.
And so I think that's what you guys are doing in Middleton super well to this point being, I mean, it's got to be one of the fastest growing churches in America, which is crazy. But it definitely is. And that's how you guys are doing it. Like through relationships, through sacrificial volunteer positions.
It's incredible.
And just people who will give up whatever, right? I think that's the sign of a Christ follower. It's like, what are you giving up for those people that give up their homes on Wednesday nights?
Yeah.
They're without a doubt, like they are Christ followers. They are in the church. They are doing whatever it takes to move it forward. And the Bible obviously talks about like the church as Christ's bride, and how we treat the church says a lot.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, man. Well, I've enjoyed our conversation, Rhett.
Absolutely.
As always, enjoy them off the mic, but this has been a fun conversation to have on the podcast as well.
Yeah,
so I appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate all of you guys that have tuned in and are listening to my conversation with Rhett. Next week, we will be on again, obviously, on Wednesdays when these episodes come out. There might be also a shift in the podcast. I'm saying this because if you've listened for the last 40 minutes, the few of you I'm talking to right now, I feel like this is a safe space to tell you this. We are probably going to be shifting the way that we do the podcast. We will still have staff on from time to time, but I really would like to pivot to conversations with people who are just attend the church and have a testimony where God just has come into their lives, how God has impacted their lives. I feel like people resonate with that. And I feel that way because I have heard from multiple people in the last 2 weeks, hey, I love what you guys are doing. And this is unprompted from them. I love what you guys are doing, but I would love to hear from people at the church. Like the church, we've done testimonial videos with couples and things where it's not a moderated, it's not a hosted, like it's not a conversation. Yeah. It's really them telling their story. But there's a lot of power in being able to sit next to somebody and ask follow-up questions and kind of let the Holy Spirit lead the conversation of what am I supposed to ask next and what are we supposed to talk about. Right. And so I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago with somebody who told me that. And then yesterday, a staff member, shout out to Olivia Thiel, walked into my office and said, hey, I've got an idea. And I was like, this is not the first time I've heard this idea. So God, I hear you. Yeah. And what we're supposed to do and how we're supposed to pivot and change. So that will likely be where I want to go. If that happens, I don't know. But I do know we have a couple people lined up that go to the church, aren't on staff, and they just want to talk about how God has impacted them, how the Springs has impacted them. And so it'll make way for some really cool conversations.
Can I say one more thing before we get out of here?
Yeah, of course.
Shout out a lot of people, but I just forgot the most important people in my life. So to my mom and my dad,
shout out.
Just wanted to say thank you for everything you've done.
Yeah. Played a big part.
Yeah, the biggest part. So I don't say it enough, but thank you just for everything. And yeah, Yeah, Luke knows them too. So they're great people.
Yeah.
And to my brother Ryan and sister-in-law Megan, just love you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Also, can't say nothing about my girlfriend.
Right.
Shout out my
Lindsay.
beautiful girlfriend, Lindsay. Love you so much. Just wanted to say that.
Yeah.
And I'm just very thankful for the people in my life.
Yeah, man. That's awesome. And I wouldn't be, I mean, I can attest to, you wouldn't be where you are today without those people and knowing you since you were in second grade, essentially. And so, yeah, just been awesome to see your growth. An honor to do the episode with you. I can't look at you anymore, else I'm going to cry for the 12th time in this episode. Might have set a record today. So, but thank you guys for tuning in, and we will catch you guys next time. See ya.